aviation industry has a long and strong history of collaboration and cooperation between companies and regulators, especially on those things that involve safety. In September of last year, EASA, FAA, Boeing, and Airbus issued a white paper on what the aviation data communication landscape should look like by the year 2035. It was in this spirit of collaboration between two regulators and two aircraft manufacturers that led to this initiative to really rethink aviation connectivity and go so far as to actually define a blueprint for both modernization and harmonization. And as new technologies and new operating platforms emerge into the aviation ecosystem at RTCA and at EUROCAE, we're taking really keen interest in these developments, and especially in this white paper, to ensure that we're doing our part to both keep our performance standards up to date and develop any new standards that are going to be vitally important as enablers of these new technologies and platforms. Anna?
Yes, Terry, thank you very much. Indeed, we see already today that the landscape for aviation connectivity is really changing on so many levels. There's so many great initiatives going on, and this white paper brings a lot of them together. And I think this session will be quite interesting to look at the different safety, security, performance levels that future connectivity will have to still support and perform to. And I think this white paper will set us out on a great discussion round here.
Great, thanks, Anna. And I'm really pleased to have with us today the authors of this white paper from both Boeing and Airbus. Dr. Todd Citron is the Chief Technology Officer for Boeing. He's responsible for developing and executing Boeing's technology strategy. And Sabine Cloquet serves as Airbus's Chief Technology Officer and leads her team in delivering breakthrough technologies to build the future of aerospace. And from the FAA, we have with us Lirio Liu, the Executive Director for the Aircraft Certification Service, where she's responsible for type certification, production approval, airworthiness certification, and continued airworthiness of the U.S. civil aircraft fleet. And that includes both commercial and general aviation. And rounding out our panel today is Rochelle Daschler, the Certification Director for EASA, and is someone who plays a very important role over at EASA, supporting both new technologies and innovative technologies that are being developed by the industry. So Rochelle, let's turn things over to you with some of your comments.
Thank you very much, Terry, and thanks a lot for the opportunity given to us to speak about the white paper and the work that has been done upstream of its publication. Just a few remarks maybe on the EASA perspective and on the why we started to engage in this collaboration. I think the key starting points were the acknowledgement of the connectivity problematic that aviation has today, looking at the fact that the connectivity needs of aviation, especially commercial air transport, but not only, were increasing overall, both for air traffic management purposes and also very much because of operational needs, airlines willing to and able to exchange more and more data with the ground. So we have an increased need for connectivity. At the same time, we know also that we have capacity issues, at least in Europe, when it comes to ATS data link and planned saturation of our VDL Mode 2 network in Europe that is used both for NTS and AOC applications. Capacity issue, which is foreseen to become worse in the future if nothing is done about it. And the third key element that we have today in our landscape is a fragmentation of landscape and a lack of harmonization worldwide about the standards and the infrastructure we are using for the physical links, for the networks, and also some of the applications which are being used. So all of that together makes it a really nice, complex problematic for the aviation community to try to solve in a cooperative way. And this is what we have tried to do, initiating this white paper with 4 parties only, so it's a small number, but we were hoping to be able to agree on something that we could then put out forward to the larger community for consideration. Over to you, Terry.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for this opening statement. I think this shows quite clearly what the main rationale for delivering the paper was, or for initiating the paper was. Maybe we can now turn it over to Lirio. Lirio, can you tell us a little bit what was the genesis of the paper, and how did you go about developing it, the 4 of you together?
Sure. First off, thank you as well to have the opportunity to be here to speak on this, because it is an exciting endeavor. But I think Rachel pretty well captured it. There was a recognition of a need, and it was also an opportunity. And so really, when you talk to Genesis, the idea grew out of a discussion between the executive leadership of EASA and FAA at the time. And they also wanted to recognize that there was work that was done by the EU-US working group that was led jointly by the Next Gen FAA organization, as well as the CISA organization. And they had produced the European Union and United States air-ground data communication strategy back in 2017. So trying to leverage that work arrangement, we came together to look for the future. Now, what is going to be the future of that strategy? Now, from the FAA side, we also brought in the right expertise. We brought in our Assistant for Architecture and Next Gen Development, Steve Bradford, who I think you'll actually have speaking later. Steve's experience in the previous work that was done, his knowledge of the past and the current activities, they really served as a strong basis of thinking about what the future will be. He was also, the lead in developing the FAA's vision for the infocentric NAS. So, I mean, like I said, you'll hear more from him as we go through this day. But EASA also pulled from the right technical expertise. We tapped in the chief technical officers of the important manufacturers. We know, though, I will say, we acknowledge it was a small group, and I think Rachel said that. It doesn't represent all the stakeholders that are involved, but the intent was to get a timely product out so that we could do further coordination among a larger group and the organizations going forward. So again, thank you for what you're doing here, because I think that starts that larger stakeholder engagement. And we all recognize that the earlier that we converge on a strategy, the more effectively we'll be able to align the government and industry resources. And I think we all know that that's important because our resources are limited. And the aim of the paper was to focus on outlining the common vision for the future for the aviation connectivity landscape, as Rachel also said, and really trying to propose some sort of a roadmap for transition. So in doing this, the real work of the team was focused on, as Terry indicated, it's a 2030 to 2035 timeframe, and we had to work in a manner that we had to scope it. So we did scope the work that was going to be looked at. And really the group together considered a couple aspects. First, large piloted aircraft and those new entrants that would be remotely piloted or even autonomous aircraft, of which they would also be operating in the same airspace together, was one condition to look at. We limited the discussion to the US and the European airspace operations, because that was what we had represented here. And then we also wanted to consider the air-ground communications needed in respect to 4 areas, and that was the ATM, the aeronautical information, airline operations, and then for RPAS and for more autonomous vehicles, the command and control aspects. What we did not want to include in the scope, just because we can't bite it all off, was the smaller RPAS operating at the low level altitude or the U-space, the passenger RPAS payload connectivity, or the ground data communications, ground-to-ground data communications. The process that was used was very structured. I think we're all very structured people in the way we think, so we implemented that. It was structured, deliberate, and the starting point was really analysis, the needs, the various connectivity considerations of the 4 areas that was just noted. There was a lot of brainstorming that went on in each of these areas for connectivity, the use cases, and this led to a SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weakness, opportunities, and threats or risks as we see it. And based on this analysis, we were able to put forward proposals provided in the white paper. And so with that, I think you understand kind of the backdrop of what we did. Let me turn it over to you so we can continue the discussion.
Great, thanks, Lirio. Again, just a great collaborative effort between the 4 parties. Todd, do you want to start with the manufacturer's perspective on it?
And I'll try to walk through the essence of what's in the white paper. I want to start by just saying I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today, and also want to thank my colleagues for the collaborative effort over the last year in pulling this together. I think it really helps lay a framework for moving forward in a very constructive way. If you look at the white paper, it starts out, as you would expect, with the objectives for this overall study, and Rochelle and Lirio have touched upon that, with the need to really reduce the fragmentation or differences in messaging standards as one goes around the globe, as well as the increasing need for bandwidth and how to provide that bandwidth in an economical way to support applications that will improve sustainability, as well as allow value-added services. And doing that in a way, though, that doesn't inhibit innovation, and as Lirio mentioned, also allows for expanded use of regulated airspace, for example, with unpiloted vehicles. And in doing this, a key aspect of the objectives are to minimize the cost of being able to support the standards that we were discussing here, as well as to maximize participation so we get maximum value. As if there's traffic that's not participating, then that's lost opportunity for all of us. So it starts out with the objectives, and then as important background, we want to not think of this in a vacuum, but there's been a lot of prior work. And so the white paper summarizes related activities in terms of applicable strategy documents, existing and planned mandates and standardization activities, the cert requirements, and existing research and development, so that we are doing this in the context of all the work that is out there, and we can leverage that. We next get into what are the key assumptions and a little bit more detail about the objectives. So I mentioned the increasing need for connectivity to support a range of services, including those that support sustainability. And an example of that is moving towards trajectory-based operations, where that technique is estimated can provide just by itself a 10% improvement in fuel efficiency or reduced emissions. That's just one example. And in doing that, how do we overcome the bandwidth limitations of the existing safety networks? And one of the motivators for this study was that limited bandwidth could limit the services, and how can we do that in a way that maintains the extremely high levels of safety? We have to do that in a way that the solution is applicable globally, making efficient use of the available spectrum, and as I mentioned, supporting future applications and wide deployment. We then took a look at the entire space and divided up into a set of domains and use cases, and defined specifically 4. Air traffic management, as you would imagine, airline operations, airline information services, and then to a lesser extent autonomy, since that is less well defined, but we want to make sure that we have a framework that's consistent with the emerging needs for remotely piloted or autonomous aircraft. And then with that set of 4 areas identified, we developed a set of candidate solutions and used the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, or SWOT analysis that Lirio mentioned, to try to walk through the specifics, for example, of various of the available link opportunities out there or messaging standards, to understand how they might apply as we try to converge and unify. And so that's laid out in the report. With that in hand, we could also lay out a notional timeline for the transition with Europe and the United States. And while there's certainly trades to be completed and some more detailed demonstrations to be performed to gain confidence, it gives us, again, a framework that we can use to start to coalesce around and lay out more detailed plans. And part of those detailed plans are what are the critical transition items for each stakeholder, whether it's the manufacturers or the NASPs, for example. So in the white paper, we also provide a table of initial actions. And then lastly, what are the next steps to make this all happen? So this summarizes a really important collaborative effort across all 4 organizations that gives us a framework. It's not done and set, but I think it tells us the next steps to get there. Thank you very much for the opportunity again to speak today.
Great, thanks, Todd. Sabine, I think Todd did a really good job of laying out some of the content that's in. Kind of review a little bit of some of the outcomes from that content that was created.
Yes, thanks a lot. First of all, to be here with the 4 of us and you around. I think we are all a bit proud, and we can, because it's so good to have these topics as an industry and a standardized solution rather than having everybody our own path. And that was really, I think, behind that whole working group, and the paper is the starting point of that. So if we look at the outcomes of this collaborative, sometimes tough process which we run with the task force, for me it's really twofold. First of all, we have a set of recommended solutions for future connectivity of aviation in each of the different operational domains that were considered and that Todd has laid out as well. And second, we do have proposed transition roadmaps to bridge the gap between the infrastructures and that we have today and then the recommended target. And for each of the players, we do have a proposed evolution plan, so the whole ecosystem would fit together. And if we look now at the recommended solutions, then it's on protocol level and then on link level. So if we look to the protocols, we have the data link air traffic services, the so-called B2, which are over Internet Protocol for Safety. And that's the target solution for the applications and network layers. These solutions that are already standardized by B2, and they will be expected soon to be standardized in the Internet Protocol for Safety as well. So that benefits from large consensus from the regions, making them excellent candidates for global solutions as we are looking at here. And they do provide a very comprehensive tool set to enable the air traffic management renovation, in particular, as well on the topic of trajectory-based operations, as Todd has already said. And this is then supporting more sustainable operations going further into that. There is no specific recommendation yet for the airline operations, nor for the nascent autonomy domain. So that will be to be seen if that's standardized by per se. We'll see that later. At link level, it is really starting with the ATM and airline operations. And the vision is to optimize the use of the scarce safety protected spectrum, while then leveraging as well and as much as possible the growing availability of broadband communication, commercial cabin connectivity in the commercial aircraft fleet. And here we really anticipate two trends: the increase of the volume of data exchange between the different nodes of the ATM and ATC and airlines operations ecosystem. So that's the aircraft as such, the airline OCC, the ATM for the strategic part, and the ATC for the technical part. And on the other hand, this large adoption of broadband connectivity solution in support of the digital aircraft operations and passenger experience. So having seen that, it seemed so natural for us to try to leverage this widely deployed and permanently increasing broadband capability, instead of trying to deploy bespoke solutions in the safety side. And this is actually really going towards this growing data demand. And the conclusions and recommendations here are really about, let's take the communications which have required demonstrated performance. So these are the ones which use safety communication links today, and adapt the historic approach here while using both the existing safety communication links, and here's getting a bit more technical even, it's the VDL2 infrastructure, VHF data link mode 2, along with the emerging SATCOM performance L-band, then the class B, and on the non-safety links as a complement, the hyper-connected ATM, as we call it, technology, which preferred use of non-safety links. And that's really the importance. Where we need safety, we take really restricted number of data on those safety links, and where we can go to the open platforms and the broadband, then we leverage the non-safety links. And that's really the point. And then on the communications which are not subject to required demonstrated performance, all operations, communications, that should be offloaded from the safety links where we have scarce resource. So that's really the big points, and then from there we take it forward into the application roadmaps.
Thank you very much, Sabine, and all the other speakers. I think this is a really interesting and comprehensive overview of how the paper was generated and what the main conclusions are. I think we see that it's quite a comprehensive paper going on to many different aspects, and also quite a technical paper, as Sabine was just outlining. So going onto many different topics. But maybe looking at what's next then, what do you expect? What was the expectation when you developed this white paper? How do you see it being taken up further by the community? What do you expect as follow-up actions?
I think we outlined a good framework, and Sabine, I think, did a great job of summarizing some of the technical solutions that we discussed. With that in mind, there's still some details to be filled in yet. And so I think there's really two dimensions. One is to get inputs from the broader industry. We certainly represent, I think, important voices, but there are others as well, and engaging the broader community to drive towards agreements that we can all implement. And just as an aside, our intent together with Airbus and EASA and the FAA is to continue this work, but we do want to pull in the additional voices. Beyond that, though, there are some blanks to be filled in. And so, for example, with the hyperconnected ATM and use of non-traditional links with emerging broadband, we need to finish the development of the protocols that allow safe use of those additional bandwidth and to be able to demonstrate that implementation. And there are a number of demonstrations, I think, planned both in Europe and in the US to help give us confidence that the concept will hold up to the standards of aviation. So it's, I think, twofold. One is the engagement of the broader community, as well as the additional, more detailed technical work to fill in the blanks to get to something that we can then go implement.
Yeah, and maybe I take it from there. I think, as you said, the paper is really driving the long-term development strategy for all the involved actors. And for us as Airbus, we will support the maturation of the different technologies proposed in the paper. So through R&D projects, CSER is one of the frames we're working in, and as well standardization, of course. For us, the priority in terms of the maturation is put on the hyperconnected ATM, because for us, that's the least mature of the recommended enablers. And to that purpose, we are leading as well a dedicated work package within what we call the Future Common Digital Infrastructure Project in the frame of CSER. And we'll accelerate the maturation of that concept and solutions by launching a demonstrator together with multiple partners. So similar activities are meant, I think, to take place in the next gen program, as it's called, with Boeing and with the US ATM renovation program. And these, I think, demonstration initiatives should really continuously synchronize, and their results then consolidated to drive the joint standards development. For us, we've already integrated all the B2 data link services as solutions on the aircraft models, and all models of the Airbus fleet have them integrated. So we have certified it, and we are under deployment for the A320 family, and that's the first concrete actions that we have done in the deployment part.
From the regulator's perspective, Lirio and Rochelle, are there any things you're expecting from the industry right now in terms of follow-up to the paper?
We both laugh mute at the same time. Maybe I'll just start. First off, a lot of work I think we expect with the paper is really we take a look at it, we take some action. I think a lot of work's already been accomplished in the development standards and the various aspects of the operations and technologies that are addressed in the paper. But, you know, there's a lot of work that still can be done. With all the operational experience that we've had in these various areas, I think we should consider, you know, whatever we have in place now, where are the gaps and what we may need to do. And of course, as you know, standards become a way for us to be able to implement faster. So I think, you know, that's what we would look for by this. Putting something out there, it provides a target that you can start to work towards. We're all looking in the same direction. There'll still be a lot of a lot of give and take, I'm sure, and a lot of more discussion to occur. And I think we both recognized early on, as Rochelle and I both said, it was a small group. And the reason was to set kind of the target. Now you've got to get the broader engagement. So bringing everyone together. So that's what we look at. I think, this forum certainly starts that discussion and provides that opportunity, visibility to it, looking at what we have and continuing to develop on standards. And, you asked the question kind of a little bit out there, Anna, about even priority, like what do you tackle first? I mean, that's a hard one. You can have 1,000 different answers, but I think, there's timeframes put into the paper so that we can try to lay out what we think is feasible at that time in the schedule. I mean, the good news is, maybe there's not one priority, but multiple, and a lot of things can be done in parallel.
So maybe just to add a few things on what was all already said, industry has indeed a key role to play for maturation of the technology. That has been clearly said. Hyperconnected ATM is still in the domain of research and development. Industry has also a key role to play in the standardization. We know we have a standardized so-called B2 standard for the applications that needs to continue living and to continue being harmonized between RTCA EuroCAE, meaning between Europe and the US. And the IPS standard is under finalization also. So standardization is a critical part of the work that needs to be done. And then stakeholder engagement was mentioned several times. That's already also a very important aspect. And we can see it at different levels. For Europe, starting with that, we have a regional challenge to engage with stakeholders which are relevant for the European context. Because of the multiplicity of air navigation service providers, we need to engage with our airlines, with all the key European players having a role to play in the more broader CNS picture. And of course, also with the wider industry. And then I think it will be very important to maintain the link we have managed to establish between US and Europe, both at regulatory level and industry level, to make this a success in the end. And at global level also, we need to work together to engage more internationally, and most probably through ICAO, working together on producing papers that will aim at trigger the international standardization work that will be needed.
And indeed, I think the beauty of the system is that we have so many different consultation and coordination mechanisms, right? Whether that's at ICAO level, at regional level, at national level, or even at this kind of group level where we can bring in other stakeholders as needed. So I think that's really great. And you've all mentioned somehow the socializing aspect of it now. So are there plans to go about that in addition to what Rachel has just described in terms of more international collaboration?
I'll bring up maybe one example, and I think it's also a critical point. The value of all this work will be a function of the degree of participation in what we establish. And so it's really, I think, critical to reflect on the standards that we establish, to make sure that, from two aspects, that they're such that they're extensible and don't inhibit innovation, and that they don't drive effort that may not achieve our objectives. And so just as an example of that, one of the focus areas has been the trajectory-based operations because of its ability to reduce fuel consumption, improve emissions. And we recently did a demonstration in collaboration with the FAA of a multi-regional trajectory-based operations in the US, Japan, Singapore, and Thailand. And with a number of partners, we were able to do that using the existing messaging standards, as well as with existing aircraft equipment by taking advantage of the electronic flight bag, for example. And so it essentially lowers the hurdle that one must clear to implement that efficient technique. And so I think as we hone in on the final version of all of this, it'll be really important to look at the standards and the rules that we're creating, and just make sure they're tightly connected with the value that's created. And we don't create a higher hurdle than would otherwise be necessary, because if we have less participation, that means less value to all of us.
And maybe to add on that, for us, I mean, yes, it's only 4 involved parties who've done that paper. It's a starting point. But for us, it's really the vision that should drive the convergence between, let's say, the 2 leading regions in terms of ATM renovation. And it should really be a stepping stone to drive global interoperability and avoid that every region looks to its own solution and standard and proprietary solutions. So that's, I think, really what should be the driving force. And then it's all about global interoperability and as a driver for efficiency, as Todd mentioned just now as well. And I think that's really expectation, that we go on in that same open mindset and open manner as we have started, into constructive and then further dialogue. Specifically, if we talk about ICAO and bringing the others on board. And I do think as well, yes, B2 standardization is completed. IPS is in its final stage. Now the attention is on the hyper-connected ATM, where we still have to develop the new standard while keeping the alternatives open in whatever case would be if we fail. And I think that's the key topic.
So back in April, the former executive director of EASA, Patrick Key, was talking to both Anna and I about the fact that there are too many standards that are out there in connectivity, somewhere in excess of 20 some standards that are part of this, and that's impacting both industry's ability to innovate, and it's impacting the regulator's ability to even regulate in this connectivity landscape. So do you agree with that? And if so, what kind of approach do you think needs to be taken to get some of those standards consolidated and more aligned?
So maybe I can get it started. We have tried to do some counting, and actually, I don't know who came up with the figure of 73. Maybe it was a very large counting, but it gives an impression of the complexity of the standard landscape. So we have started to engage more specifically with UKA on that topic, and I think we will see more work coming along, hopefully with both RTC, UKA, and other players, to see what we can do to streamline these standards. Maybe some of them are obsolete. Maybe some of them are really critical to update, and maybe we are missing some of them. So it's a good point in time to launch a thorough review of the standard landscape.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry. I think we're just to add there. I think there are a lot of standards out there, and I think at some point we start to look at everyone that has to support those. We put our resources across those. A lot of it is people volunteering as a side job to be able to do that. I think that getting some convergence on the things that are the priorities, the areas where you can see you can get what you need out of it, and then you have less to update in the future too. So you don't have discontinuity in there. So anyway, I think there's certainly have a lot of experience in working in these areas, and I think that would probably be something to consider as we go forward.
I think if I could add, I think it's not just the number, but the complexity, and I think it's what Rochelle and Lyra both talked about. We've got to take these things back to the value, the objective, and just do the test. Is that particular aspect of whichever standard, does it contribute to that objective? And again, just one simple example is the recent multi-regional trajectory-based operations operations demo is we were able to do that with existing messaging, for example. Not to say that's the only answer, but I think that testing of does this aspect of whichever standard, what value, what objective does it contribute to, and is it necessary? And I think you look at the internet protocol. This is just a marvel at the amount of value that it's created around the globe, and it's relatively simple. It's very extensible. It leaves a lot of flexibility for how to use it. And I think just that thought process and that testing, I think, is a healthy thing for all of us.
Yeah, I do think it's a very valid point. On one hand, I mean, we have a status quo on the legacy, and we have a target. And the paper outlines, I think, very well the enabling mechanisms to reach convergence in the future. So on application level, network level, and then connected ATM at link level. I think if we want to get there, we should really limit the evolutions on the legacy standards and focus our efforts on the publishing of globally agreed standards that will then become unique and global solutions for data link solutions around the globe. I think, as you said, Tom, it's not about to limit everything, but to have unique standards which give enough flexibility on the technology level to adapt then and to build it through. So that's, for me, really the key thing. We should have the objective to not necessarily reduce the number of technical standards, but to define a unique set of globally applicable standards to which we can then work. And I think that's the basis that we laid in the paper. Thank you.
And I think I plead guilty for the 73 number. I think this came out of a discussion between some of our colleagues here in the EUROCAE Secretariat and some of the colleagues in EASA when we really did a thorough review of all the standards which are out there, whether that's EUROCAE, RTCA, ARINC, IEEE, etc. I think, and the more you look, the more you find. So, but this is definitely something, and I think, Sabine, you make a very, very important point. At the end, it's about providing a consolidated and comprehensive set of standards that works for the community, right? So not about reducing the number, not about increasing the number, but having the right standards in place. And I think in this sense, the paper definitely also serves as an impetus into EUROCAE and RTCA, and we have already started to review the current standards and how we can provide a better set maybe in the future. Indeed.
Well, I think we're just about out of time. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you as the panelists for just a great presentation. Sabine, Rochelle, Lirio, Todd, it was a great way to start off our joint RTCA EUROCAE Summit on Connectivity. We're really, I said in the beginning, standards are important to both Anna and I in terms of being enablers of new technology and new platforms going forward. And so we want to continue to be very engaged on this particular topic, as it's going to be very important to, again, have that right set of that suite of standards that are going to be necessary, or modify current ones, or if we do need to make some new ones, we want to be in a position to do that so that we're serving both the industry as well as the regulator. We're really happy to bring the white paper to a broader audience through this webinar and the seminar and the summit. And so again, I really want to thank you. I know we're going to be hearing in some of our upcoming panels, there'll be a lot of building off of many of the points that you brought up today. So Anna, closing thoughts?
You covered it all, Terry. No, I think it's really important. I think the recognition that this paper is out there is super important. I think this is a great initiative to start a broader thinking process on many different levels. We also saw from your presentations and intervention that a lot more work needs to be done at many different levels, and I think this will definitely spark some very interesting discussions both today and in the follow-up of it. And again, thank you very much also from my side to all of you, Rachel, Sabine, Lirio, and Todd, for joining today and for presenting this great initiative on behalf of your 4 organizations. Thank you.